Hey, it's Greg Grunberg, Snap Wexley from Heroes, and Commander Finnegan of Yorktown from a little thing called Star Trek, and you are kneeling before the pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello, and welcome to another galactic edition of Kneel Before Pod. I'm your host Craig McKenzie, and we're here to discuss Star Wars Episode VIII, The Last Jedi, in more detail than we did before. We did our knee-jerk reaction after the midnight screening, so now we're here after having a week to reflect on it. Joining me in this galaxy far, far away from where you're listening, we've got Angus representing the dark side. Why not?
Good evening.
And Isaac representing the light side.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I sense conflict in him.
Everyone's conflicted. And I'm somewhere in between, so we have a good balance to the force. There's been worse intros, I think. So yeah, how is everybody? Welcome aboard.
Yeah, I'm pretty full. How you doing? Sammy T?
I'm very well, thanks.
Excellent. So we've had a week to catch up on some sleep and digest this film, and a few minutes to digest our dinners, so we hopefully have more coherent thoughts than we did last week when we recorded 13 minutes of, wow, that was something else. Quickest edit I've ever done. So yeah, a week. So what are your kind of spoiler-free thoughts? Keep spoilers out of it for now. We'll delve well into it afterwards. So Angus, you go first.
Yeah, it's interesting because my immediate reaction to the film, I think, is probably quite different. Not, I don't know if it's massively different in a kind of positive or negative direction, but you know, with the benefit of time and hindsight to think back on what I saw, I've got a few more questions, a few more sort of thoughts about the trilogy, the new trilogy as a whole, where it's going, and you know the direction of that. So I still enjoyed it as a movie. I've compared it a lot more to Force Awakens and tried to kind of think about it in the context of the original trilogy as well. Obviously, there was going to be a lot of comparisons drawn to Empire being the middle part. And yeah, I'm sure as we get into the kind of spoiler territory, we'll talk about that a lot more.
So you would say your reaction's a bit more measured than it was last week?
Yeah, well, I think it was maybe a bit more measured than yours might have been. I think you were very positive coming out of it, and definitely, I mean, immediately coming out of the screening and speaking to Isaac about it, I think we both thought that our immediate reactions to The Force Awakens were, you know, in a far more positive, whereas this one left me with a few questions on the night, and those questions have kind of like grown a bit and made me kind of think a lot more things about, as I've said, about kind of where this fits in the overall Star Wars galaxy.
So you haven't flipped and started signing petitions?
No, definitely not that strong.
Cool. That's an interesting spoiler-free bit. So Isaac, what do you think after this?
Yeah, it was good. I still think like Force Awakens was better, and this one it's like it's like it moves all the characters on a bit. It's a little bit structurally all over the show. Like it's not like, yeah, I'll talk about spoilers, but it's not structurally great. But it's a lot of fun. There's like fun action scenes and like it sort of pushes on. Like, not really, like it's not an Empire film. It's maybe it's not Return of the Jedi either. It's not. It's still kind of a Star Wars movie, but it's not like it's not the sort of expected Star Wars sort of movie. So that was fun to see. And,
yeah, it's fair enough. So again, a bit more distance from it has kind of made you reflect on it a bit, which is, I guess, the aim of doing the knee-jerk reaction versus our extensive discussion on it, where we have a bit of time to reflect on it. I saw it a second time on Saturday in the new Cineworld 4DX screen, which I'm never going to again. It's a really, really distracting experience.
I was going to say that was a free plug for Cineworld there, but actually it's turned out quite negative.
It's an Cineworld, yeah. Don't do this, yeah. No, it's pretty distracting, but that's not what we're talking about. But seeing it the second time, I liked it a bit. Actually, liked it more the second time because knowing where certain plots were going, I could reflect on what the moments were more. There was less. They always say that the second time watching a film can, enhance your enjoyment of it, or if it's just, or it can show you if a film is. Actually, this was okay to see once, but watching it a second time, it loses a lot. And I think this film gains more on repeat viewings. I mean, I haven't seen it again, although I will. I'll be seeing it again in a few days, so it'll be interesting to see what the third viewing's like. But yeah, I still love it. I think it's better than Force Awakens. I certainly think it's up there with the best of them, although all the people doing their Star Wars rankings at the moment, I mean, I don't think it's fair to do that because I haven't had as long with this film as I have with any of the others. So it's difficult to place it in context of the other 6. Although it's better than the first 3. Well, the prequel 3.
Careful.
Just where it fits in relation to the original trilogy is up in the air for me at the moment. So, but no, love it. I love this film. So
I think you bring up an interesting point about seeing it a second time, having a bit of time to reflect on it. I've only seen it that once, and it was at the midnight screening with you guys, and that was immediately preceded by The Force Awakens. So obviously you're kind of getting built up in this hype machine to see the latest film coming out, and I think that kind of colours your viewing of it, because I don't know if it's like you want to enjoy it more because it's this massive kind of event. So I do wonder how I would react to it seeing it a second time. I'm sure I will see it again pretty soon.
Yeah, it's worth watching again. I mean, of course it is. Or it needs to be, because Disney spend enough money on these things, so they want people rewatching them, don't they? So, in their quest to rule the world. So, after that, unless anyone has anything to add, can launch straight into spoilers and then dig deep.
Might as well.
Is it like a Porg yell for the spoiler alert?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the gods of editing supply. The good thing about Star Wars is it isn't short of sound effects. So it could be anything. Might be a pod racer. It's not going to be a pod racer. So let's move on. So here we are. We're free to talk about whatever we want in relation to this film. I mean, we don't want to be getting too many tangents, even though we will. We always do. So in terms of story, like this film, the structure is there are 4 stories really, or there's certainly 4 locations typically. So you have, Luke and Rey, you've got Kylo Ren and the First Order, I suppose. They're part of the same story. Finn and Rose, and who was the 4th one? Are there only 3?
Holdo and Poe Dameron.
Oh yes, the Poe Dameron stuff. Yeah,
Poe's sort of mini insurrection.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the stories start off as a plot, so there's the rebels trying to get away from the First Order, which is the opening plot, and then Rose and Thingy go off from that plot to their own one. Luke and Rey and Kylo Ren also have 2 separate, because there's the Kylo Ren and Rey. They're talking to each other. Yeah. It's kind of a separate thing to the Luke thing, but they're kind of intertwined all together. Those 2. So it's each plot kind of becomes a different plot at some point before it reaches before they all link together.
Yeah, everything's connected. That is where it's like Empire, or Empire Strikes Back, where you have all these kind of branching plot lines with all the characters doing different stuff. Of course, the stuff they're doing is widely different from that film, but structure-wise it's kind of similar in that respect. And it worked for Empire Strikes Back, and because it gives the characters agency within their own story, so it gives them something to do. And I think here it's great because everyone's at the lead of their own story rather than just bouncing off each other on a different one. And
I think leading off with the rebellion, the resistance, fleeing from the Empire / First Order. When that sort of kicked off, you're obviously thinking about this in the Empire Strikes Back type context. It kind of reminds you a lot of not so much the Hoth battle, but the escape from Hoth and the kind of scattering of the protagonists in that film. So I thought, straight up we were kind of headed into familiar territory, but of course, as you say, there's all these different kind of strands that give various different characters their own adventures to kind of head off on. Yeah,
and I wonder if every film in this trilogy is going to start off with Poe Dameron doing something. Obviously, he was where we started in Force Awakens, and he's where we started here.
He's the instigator.
Really so.
Yeah. Always put your most handsome man forward in the opening movie.
And it was a great opening as well. It was just that back and forth he had with Hux was excellent.
Yeah, I know Adrian Edmondson he was there.
He was. British actor that no one in the US has ever heard of, so was lost.
Yeah. I think Hux is probably the best. I think he's the character who he's now far better than he was, because originally he's kind of like just a Hitler in the first one, and this is like super fun, like he's a screaming incompetent and a big sort of. It kind of reminded like whatever Ben Mendelsohn is in Rogue One. How like he starts off like as a big shot general, and then no one by the end of the film, no one's listening to him.
Yeah,
that's a similar. Hux is just sort of screaming out of like, respect through fear, but really everyone's just sort of like just ignoring him. Like he's doing a rant, but he's not really in charge, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that they undercut him quite so quickly, because they kind of build him up, and as you've said, there's these kind of Nazi-esque speeches in Force Awakens, and so you get the idea that they're building him up to this, I suppose, Tarkin-esque Hitler-like figure, and then immediately into this film he's just being kind of messed with over the intercom.
Well, I was far from impressed with him in Force Awakens, because I thought the way Abrams framed it was as if he was supposed to be kind of a terrifying leader type. Yeah. I kind of thought he was a whiny, entitled, incompetent man boy. And this film completely leans into that part of him. It's as if Rian Johnson saw that in Force Awakens and thought, I'm going to run with this, and then did. And then it gives him definition, but it also gives the First Order kind of a bit of extra depth to it, because the First Order aren't the Empire. They're like a pale imitation of the Empire. It's kind of like the whole alt-right philosophy that's cutting about just now is a pale imitation of fascism, where people are just trying to be more threatening than they are. And I feel like that kind of rings true for both Kylo Ren and Hux.
Yeah. So that's like, in the next film, I'm guessing like in Episode 9, they'll probably... Because like it's sort of like two people where there's no actual leader between the two of them. So that could be like, they'll probably have a lot of fun with that. Sort of, there's sort of the power, like two people trying to equally have power when neither of them have that much to, like, actual experience or know what they're doing.
Well, I mean, Kylo Ren wants to be Darth Vader, but Darth Vader was legitimately terrifying to everyone around him, so they would listen to him. You wrong Darth Vader, you get strangled, whereas you wrong Kylo Ren and he might break stuff.
Has a wee tantrum.
Yeah, that's all he does.
But by the end of this, he's attempting to kind of grow into that, big bad role, because he's kind of asserting himself over Hux, and even though through Force Awakens and the beginning of this film they're still fighting over who's got the power, don't you think by the end of it Kylo Ren is definitely kind of in the driving seat?
He is, but he's still insecure about it. To compare him to Vader, Vader was very casual about the fact that no one should cross him because the results speak for themselves. Whereas what you would get is Hux defying Kylo Ren and he throws him against a wall.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, he has to keep proving why he should be in charge. And
but even
going to keep challenging it,
Even in Star Wars, Vader was kind of, on a bit of a leash to begin with. He eventually became more of an independent force of evil. But, to begin with, he was a bit of an attack dog almost.
Yeah, I'm still confused as to why that happened. But I suppose it's because A New Hope, as it's now known, was made before they even knew there'd be a sequel. So, Darth Vader wasn't as badass as he could have been.
Yep.
But even then, he's not, there is no real struggle between him and Tarkin. It's clear that Vader respects him. Whereas there's no respect here at all.
Agreed.
So yeah, the First Order, whiny, entitled, alt-right, leftist man boys. There you go. Or rightist man boys.
They're just very confused.
Yes, they are. They don't know what they are. So yeah, I quite like that angle because it means that the villains aren't too much to worry about in terms of how formidable they are. I mean, it's only the fact that they've got bigger guns and more of them that makes them intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if Leia had those kind of resources, she would have them running screaming, probably.
It's weird that we haven't had a Star Wars film yet where the rebels have had any actual weapons. So we've had a couple of Death Stars and they've got Star Destroyers and the rebels have always got just little buses and little whatever. Surely they'll also have their own Star Destroyer sized ships kicking about.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the structure of the rebellion is not something the films have ever went into, but it seems like they've got a lot of medical frigates and cruisers and things like that. But I suppose the closest is in the prequels when they were, the Republic were the good guys, so effectively the rebels, even though they were the bigger organisation and the Separatists were actually the rebels, but they had all the cool stuff. They had all the tech, In
terms of the sort of space chase part of the plot of Last Jedi, do you think that the Empire would have had better weapons and been able to catch the Resistance as they were kind of kiting them away? They were always just out of reach, and that was a big part of the sort of ticking clock element of the plot was that they were rapidly running out of fuel, could only outrun them for so long. But I get the impression that maybe the First Order, definitely in this, didn't seem like they had the capability to, catch up with them, have superior firepower, really, from that range. It was like they were being kind of led on a bit of a chase rather than being able to overwhelm them with their superiority.
I think they might have just been toying with them. Also, they have a Death Star gun, which would have been super useful. Can they just use the big Death Star gun and shot them? Whether I suppose it's not, maybe it hasn't got much range on it. But I think they might have just been we want them to suffer and we don't want to just blast them straight away. We want them to kind of...
We want them to realise that this is the end of their resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that as arrogance. I mean, what would Vader have done? Vader would have called in some Star Destroyers to hyperdrive in front of them. Job done. That's the kind of no-nonsense tactics he would employ. But I feel like, according to Hux, the battle was already won, and he was just going to wait and enjoy the victory.
So I think it's more like a cat toying with a mouse rather than... And so it's, they're kind of... It was their own hubris that meant that they were just tailing them that long.
Yeah, it was just villain being stupid because they're whiny and entitled. They wanted to drink in the victory and that was it. So, I mean, there was nothing really stopping Kylo Ren from getting in his cool-ass TIE fighter and attacking them again, I suppose.
It's interesting that they let it go on so long then. Yeah. They're obviously having a lot of fun just watching them kind of limp off because they gave them quite a lot of time to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, because I could see that... I could see Hux just thinking that plan would work, but not bothering with it because he doesn't think it's necessary. He makes the classic Saturday morning cartoon villain mistake, leaving it too long to monologue and giving your adversary a chance to escape. That's what I think, anyway. That's perhaps headcanon. It's maybe just something that Rian Johnson didn't think or care about. You know, it's like the Hitchcock thing where he said, why don't these people just go to the police? Because it's boring.
Definitely didn't feel like when the chase began, it felt like it was, a way into the movie, not that it was going to be such a major kind of plot point. But I suppose it did give the other characters who weren't running about an island with Luke Skywalker something to do.
It also kind of works because Poe Dameron just gets really antsy. You know, he wants to be doing something, or he just wants something to happen. So he's sitting there, just not knowing what to do with himself, and he's getting frustrated with his leadership for not doing anything about it. But his character is that he's impulsive and makes mistakes. I mean, the whole thing is he gets a lot of people killed at the start for something that's not really that great a victory on balance. So the thing about it is their tactics do work because Poe Dameron is the way he is. But then, but Leia and Admiral Holdo, they're both very, very experienced and know what they're doing and know that they have time to come up with something. You know, they're playing the long game effectively.
What did you think of the Rey and Luke plot? Because obviously a lot of Force Awakens is about the kind of search for Skywalker, the map that everyone's questing after. That's the whole reason that Kylo Ren is pursuing Poe and BB-8. And so, the big build-up was really kind of to the point where BB-8 and R2 unite the map pieces and they finally find the way to Skywalker. It gets left on this cliffhanger, literally, as Rey's holding out the lightsaber to Luke. And then so, the expectations for this film where, it's the return of the Jedi.
Yeah, and instead it's the end of the Jedi, effectively, which is interesting because the thing is, it could have played out with a very similar beats, where you've got Luke as an Obi-Wan style character who's very wise and very knowledgeable and imparting all this wisdom. And, that's not really that interesting, or at least on paper it's not that interesting. I think having him be a broken man who's kind of consumed by all his mistakes and has turned his back on everything is great, and also subverting the expectation that fans of Star Wars have about Luke Skywalker has this legendary status because he was in the original trilogy, he was the hero of the original trilogy, and then to see him reduced to a crazy old hermit on the top of a mountain, essentially, is also interesting. It's a great way to take the character.
Yeah, and I think that people's expectations, just from over-analysing the trailer and seeing all these images of what looked like Rey training with the lightsaber, people were thinking that they were getting a Luke on Dagobah 2.0, training montage almost. But yeah, and some of the criticism I've seen, especially kind of in relation to people's favourite characters from the original trilogy, the way Han is dispatched in The Force Awakens and the way that Luke's story comes to an end here. People feel like they've been given short shrift, but I think that, this trilogy is all about introducing the new characters and starting off a whole new story, a whole new saga. And if you think about, you mentioned old Ben Kenobi there as well. If you think about his kind of character in Star Wars, he's an old guy. You don't really get much of his backstory. He tells you a little bit, and then
he lies about what he does tell you.
Yeah, and then he's gone by the end of it. And obviously his story kind of was developed from there. And as you said already, they didn't really know what direction they were going with it, and he was kind of given a bit more. And then with the prequels, we've gotten all this backstory of his adventures with Anakin and etc. I think people are just a bit too spoiled in terms of having all these different pieces filled in, because people's criticisms about Han and Luke's, futures after they conquered the Empire, they've had years and years to kind of fill in the gaps with their own theories, with their own stories, and then this just happens to be the way that things have gone, the canon, and I gather that some people are a bit disappointed with it. Personally, not really. I don't kind of feel that those criticisms are valid.
Well, I mean, I think they're valid in terms of if you have an expectation of what you want from a certain film, and you don't get it, then That is valid. If you wanted Empire Strikes Back 2.0, then that's a reasonable expectation, especially based on what you saw in Force Awakens. It just looked like, based on that film, it looks like the rest of the trilogy is going to be a mirror of the original trilogy, which to me is very boring. I don't want to see that because I've already seen it. I'd rather see something like this that pushes things forward and future-proofs the franchise effectively. So subverting my expectation of what I was going to get from Luke was great because it plays much more into the kind of personality that Mark Hamill has as well. Ever since Star Wars wrapped up in whatever year Return of the Jedi stopped filming, he has become like a prolific voice actor. People that follow him on Twitter know he's quite a jokester, and this version of Luke, he's much more kind of he's very off the wall, which is maybe it's letting the actor meet the character in the middle somewhere, but I quite like the fact that he's just able to cut loose a bit and play the role differently, and he's never been better than he has in this film in this role.
Well, I don't really remember the old ones that well. Like, I think I watched them ages ago. So when it comes to the old characters, I'm not too fussed. Like, I don't. Like, I know they'll be in, like, they have, Leia and Luke and Han Solo in the first one. But yeah, like, he's just there to pass the baton on, really. So, I mean, I don't think he's, like, I don't think there's the last ever seen of him, because, Force ghosts and all that. The same way that, Obi-Wan was in the other old ones, even though his character died in the first film. But, like, yeah, he was a fun little weird old hermit man, and he was, like, I didn't really, like, after a while, I'm not a super fan of his big entrance at the end. It's a bit, I think there's a lot of sort of, his time is done is so against what he used to be. He doesn't want the warrior life that's kind of plagued him forever. And then, like, at the end bit where he just turns upon Crate and is back good old fashioned, young Luke Skywalker with a new haircut and stuff. It just seems a bit, like sort of like, oh, don't forget, like, we've got to have, we can't have a Star Wars film with Mark Hamill, and it has to have a bit of old feeling. Boyish Luke's adventures, as opposed to just he could have just, like, so I prefer, like, I'm far more interested in, like, the Rey's element of the story. So, like, he's now gone, like, he's taught everything he can. That's kind of him. It's kind of his thing done, and he gets the end sort of bit, the climax of the movie, and it's a bit underwhelming. Because that's what I saw came out of the film. I was like, okay, like that ended like an hour early. Then it ends. Yeah, so it ends. It should, like, the big crescendo is the throne room, the big middle bit, all our questions, all the things we've been building up to. It's all answered. We got a big thingy, and then the film continues for a bit, and we go to Crate, and Luke turns up, and it's all like, we don't really need any of this. This hasn't added anything. It's just extra stuff. Just more Star Wars for our money, but it doesn't really. Just a bit of a slow sigh towards the credits.
See, I would disagree with the little ending thing. I thought the Crate scene was really well done, and I like that Luke got a kind of final confrontation with Kylo Ren, but it was more of a ideological confrontation than it was a physical one, because Luke isn't physically there, but it's the idea that he's kind of showing Kylo Ren that everything he's learned and everything he thinks is a lot of nonsense, and then he's doing that kind of grand gesture to let things continue on differently. He's sacrificing himself so that the universe can continue on without being burdened by the past, effectively. Except for Leia.
So there is the shot where it's like both of them stood there with lightsabers, and it's like, it's so close to a Mortal Kombat. We're waiting for the, it sort of like zooms in a bit, and they're both at either side of the doodad. Like, you could just put health bars above that, like right there. It's like, okay, fight sort of thing. It's such like here it comes, everybody. Here's the big bit. It was a bit sort of, yeah.
I thought it was cool that they built it up as if it was going to be the showdown to end all showdowns, and then it wasn't. You know,
Yeah.
and the thing is, we've seen so many of these end fights in Star Wars movies, you know, where the good guy and the bad guy, they meet and they ignite their different coloured lightsabers and then they hit them together a few times and have banter in between, and then one of them either dies or escapes or loses a hand.
Yeah, I appreciate the difference there, and them kind of pulling the rug out from people's expectations, and I did like it. I noticed at the time and thought, what? How did he manage to dye his beard and get a haircut on his travels there? But then, you know, it's all revealed.
All the Guardians on whatever the planet's called, Acto.
Oh, the little matron.
He just pops down to the like fish barber or whatever. But yeah. So I thought it was pretty cool, his whole sort of force projection, and then he was definitely the hero for me all the way through the original trilogy. I really enjoyed his character and his kind of journey through that, from farm boy staring at the suns on Tatooine, and then so that gave me those kind of chills at the end, you know, as he was like levitating and staring at the sun one last time with the Force theme. Yeah, they're always pulling on the heartstrings with the music.
Yeah, and the sort of mirror between the beginning and the end of his journey was nice. Yeah.
Well, I can understand why people are upset that, you know, his sort of heroic journey all the way through the original trilogy to bringing balance to the Force, ending the Emperor, all that kind of stuff. People want this kind of happy ending for him, and so they're you know, maybe upset that he went into this life of solitude on a rock in the middle of the sea, milking strange animals. But you know, that's happened. It's happened. That's the way his story ended, and he was able to take part in another kind of massive set of events in the galaxy. And even though I'm maybe one of those people that would have liked to have seen him kind of live happily ever after, I still find that it was like a satisfying end to his story so far. You know, he might turn up with like a blue
outline.
Blue halo of light around him.
100% likely that he'll be in the next one as a Force ghost.
Especially with J.J. Abrams making it. And the thing is, I mean, if you had the Dagobah 2.0, what would have been interesting about that? I mean, you would have just probably had a retread of similar information that we've already got, and Rey kind of learning it or asking slightly different questions. And what would they have done? They would have done a riff on the lifting the X-Wing scene. They would have done a riff on they did a riff on the cave anyway. Although I think this
was jazzy.
This version of the cave was interesting. I mean, the fact is that the dark thing that's hiding underneath is a mirror. You know, that's not subtle at all. It's just completely, it's what your problems are inward. Like that's the issue. And I mean, the cave stuff in Empire Strikes Back still confuses me to this day. But I think I think the idea is that Luke has the potential to become that, whereas Rey is kind of fixated on herself, you know, because she is kind of self-absorbed. Her purpose in this, or her desire in this film is to find out her place in the universe. And I like that it turns out that she doesn't actually have one. You know, her parents aren't important, her journey isn't important in a kind of galactic sense. You know, she's not a Skywalker, she's not a Solo, she's not a Kenobi, she's not a Palpatine, she's just someone.
I think it's more saying that it's not saying that you're not important. I think it's more saying that you don't have to have had an important history. Like you can still be a hero, but you don't have to have been from a great. You can anyone can be a hero when she wants to know who her parents are and she sees herself reflected. I think it's more like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who your parents are. It's like what you do is that's like your legacy is, and it doesn't matter what your parents could have been anybody, but what you'll be remembered for, your future is all dependent on your actions.
And it also mirrors what Luke said about if you strip away the myth and look at the deeds of the Jedi, the legacy they have is failure. You know, they weren't that impressive when you really look at what happened to them and what they did and what they became. And the fact is, strip away the myth of the Skywalkers. What Luke did is what defines him, and what he's doing now defines him. and what he does next defines him. But at the end of the day, the fact that he's a Skywalker has no bearing on anything really.
Yeah, and I think you need to kind of tear down a bit of that legacy of the two trilogies that have come before, because if not, you're just kind of doomed to repeat the same story over and over again. So it's refreshing to have something new, a different kind of outlook on it all.
Yeah, and I would have absolutely hated it if coming out where she says, "Show me my parents," and coming out of the mirror was a kind of CGI shot of Ewan McGregor or Alec Guinness, revealing that she was Kenobi's daughter, and I just think that's boring because it doesn't add anything other than the fact is, oh my god, she's connected to someone we once knew, but it doesn't tell you anything about her. It just kind of tells you where her DNA comes from, which is pointless, especially now that they've recontextualized the Force away from this midichlorian nonsense, and they've made it about this. It's just a thing that balances itself in different ways, So the fact is that Snoke was around and Kylo Ren was around, so that was a lot of darkness kicking about. So the Force essentially chose Rey as an avatar for itself to balance that out. Yeah, so stripping away legacy. I mean, that's kind of a theme of this film. And I think that it's important. I mean, Star Wars is a franchise that needs to persist because Disney didn't spend $4 billion on something that they just want to wrap up in the next film. They want it to endure, and you can't endure if you just keep clinging on to the old guard, because they're not getting any younger. One of them sadly died unexpectedly, so can't be in the next film. So you're kind of stuck. You have to keep moving, and you have to keep it interesting. And rather than having endless processions of future generations of the big families, what can you do? You can build it so that anyone can be a hero, and the Force can be strong with anyone. It doesn't matter.
Yep, someday we're going to see a standalone film about that kid with the broom.
He'll be Rey's apprentice in the next film. I love that shot, actually. I love that end sequence, just where they were telling the story of Luke Skywalker, which is, here's that legend once again. And then the Force pulling the broom towards him as he kind of looks out into the stars. It's just really interesting because it suggests that, we don't know who this kid is and we don't need to know. The fact is that things are changing.
What about Finn? He was a big part of The Force Awakens, and he's
he's in this, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's got a whole other sort of set of adventures to go on in this one.
Weirdly disconnected adventures.
Yeah.
Or they feel disconnected, but, they pay off with the kid at the end.
It all ties back to that ring.
Yeah, it does. Well, sort of. I mean, it's the kind of idea that, the rebellion will have to come from somewhere. And it's going to come from the roots of society, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, underdogs and stuff.
Yeah.
Inspired by casino jailbreaks and things.
Well, the thing is, I actually thought the Canto Bight, or is it Canto Blight?
I think it's Blight.
Yeah. That planet, the casino planet. It's interesting, like, the whole thing that they don't ever mention before is that, like, the First Order or the Empire was allowed to exist because the rich allowed it to exist, because presumably it's beneficial to them. And it's kind of, if you look just underneath the surface, you see this undercurrent of oppression that's powering this whole engine. And you don't have to look that hard to find it. You just have, but there's people just willfully ignoring it as well because it suits them to do so. Which, a very modern idea. And
they also find out that it's not just the supposed bad guys that are buying weapons and, funding these people's lifestyles, but the apparent good guys as well are also kind of warmongers.
Yeah. I mean, could that be a reference to the thing in our world at the moment, where, to use the term social justice warrior, where people say, I'm going to boycott this for this reason, but it's the idea of, like, how far do you take your ethics? At what point can you, what do you have to do to exist in this world?
Yeah, how easy is it to unravel all that stuff?
Yeah. It gets to the point where you can't use power because that power comes from things that destroy the planet.
I suppose it is an interesting direction for Star Wars, which has always been a kind of good v bad, light v dark, black versus white, red versus blue, whichever other kind of binary you want, binary suns, and now there's all sorts of shades of grey, dare I say?
Yeah, well, stuff sitting in the middle. Yeah, I think it's more interesting that way because it does allow all the characters to straddle that as well. Because Rey doesn't conform necessarily to the light side completely. She's completely governed by her emotions for a start. Kylo Ren is, well, he's trying to be evil, but he's not very good at it.
Yeah, Finn was programmed to be evil, rejected it, pretended to be good for a while, but just tried to get away with it, and then ended up, being a bit more heroic at the end of Force Awakens, and then he's back to his kind of, slightly cowardly ways as he's attempting to escape by himself again. He
was also kind of seduced by the whole glitz and glamour of the planet until it was pointed out to him. So he was also ignoring everything that was making the society work. So that's interesting in itself. It's what people have to do to get through the day, I suppose, in these types of situations. Ignore the people worse off than me because I don't feel I can do anything about it,
Yeah. So we understand.
That's just real life, though, isn't it? That's not Star Wars. That's not Star Wars.
That's just Wars.
Ultimately, he participates in the whole the whole jailbreak of the alpacas.
And the alternative title for this movie.
Jailbreak of the alpacas. I think that sequence is a bit prequely, actually. All these weird animals running around destroying stuff.
It was good fun though. Like, it was bright and shiny, and it was sort of newish. Like, it was a fun sort of middle. Like, there's an action scene to sort of keep everybody sort of awake and focused and happy. And there's a lot of new world we haven't seen.
I understand why it fits into the story, but I don't know how it fits in. I don't. I don't know. Maybe you guys can explain it to me about how you think if it works or not. The fact that they're able to, sneak off and take part in this separate sort of caper.
I think it goes on a bit long, maybe, but I think the spirit of the sequence or these scenes is interesting. Like I said about the class divide and the role of slavery in this universe and things. That's an interesting message. And the shades of grey brought in by this DJ character who was a bit weird was fine as well. And I also quite like the idea that there's an entire universe outside the window. You see this kind of insular perspective from the rebels or the Empire or the Resistance and the First Order, but you don't really see much of the world around them and how it normally works. So it's but when that insight.
When you delve too deep into that, you get nightclubs on Coruscant and death sticks and stuff.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it was all great, but it's, it does give you scope, though.
What we're saying is we want to understand more about the workings of the Galactic Senate.
Well, that's it. I need a really long political dispute about trade routes and the cost of fuel in this economy, and I don't know what else they want to talk about. I think there are good ways to show things like that. George Lucas made the mistake of telling you and not showing you, whereas this is trying to show you without telling you, although it doesn't tell you enough, I suppose.
Just searching for that balance once again.
That's it. It's all about balance. But it's a major theme in this film, is balance, finding that, that the truth is somewhere in between, isn't it? The Resistance aren't, their hands aren't clean because they're buying from the same people the First Order are buying from. But what they do with that is different, I suppose.
Yeah, and we get a couple of different perspectives. I think it's kind of unique to this film that we are told things from Kylo Ren's point of view, or he presents what happened in a certain light, and Luke also tells Rey about what happened between them, And so you get these kind of different sequences. You don't know what to believe until... I don't know if I still know what to believe.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that, Luke lies about it, which suggests that he's ashamed of what he did. And then that's backed up by what he says later, when he tells the truth, or what you assume to be the truth. Mm-hmm. So Kylo Ren's perspective on it is that my master came into my room at night and tried to kill me.
Yeah.
And then Luke's perspective is, I went into his room at night and thought about killing him, but decided at the last minute that wasn't the way forward, but then he woke up.
That's still not good, though. Like,
yeah.
It's like, I only thought about trying to murder a child. Like, I'm totally innocent.
Like father, like son.
Yeah. And isn't that the thing that, like, all dark side... Well, it's like the reverse, but, like, aren't all dark side apprentices supposed to kill their like, it's just a standard that they kill their master to, like, carry on, sort of thing. So, Sidious to Plagueis, Vader to Sidious.
Yeah.
Kylo Ren to Snoke.
So, in a way, it's the most light side thing you can do. Just murder your own apprentice.
Yeah.
Total reverse Sith.
Well, yeah, although the thing is, Luke was afraid of the rising darkness that he sensed, which, if you think back to Yoda, fear was the first step on the path to the dark side, I suppose. So Luke was terrified of what was happening, thought he could put a stop to it, and then he decided, hang on, that's not the way. And then the end result of it was, well, what happened, and then he spends the next 20 years. No, it's not as long as that. It's probably 10 years, isn't it?
Probably.
Kylo Ren's in his 20s. He can't be any older than 16, 17.
Yeah.
In that scene. So, the next 10 years happen as it is, and Luke spends the next 10 years ashamed of himself and shutting himself off from the universe. And I mean, I can see why he would do that, but I can also see why he would be terrified of the fact that a new Darth Vader could arise from his DNA, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I suppose his Darth Vader was his DNA.
Yeah.
So, I suppose it's like there's it's not like you're not a goodie forever sort of thing. So really, anyone anyone can eventually like become evil or turn to good, or they could do questionable things, or the morals could be mixed up, or all sorts.
It's also you're not always good or always bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because I don't know, even the best person probably does questionable things now and again. You might have a desire to be a good person, but the fact that you're human or whatever alien in Star Wars you happen to be kind of gets in the way. And the fact is that the Jedi in their prime would forbid any of these dark impulses, or forbid strong emotional attachments, or the kind of Jedi code is a list of do not, which is kind of short-sighted, and ultimately caused Anakin to become evil because he was hiding these things that he thought were natural, but according to the Jedi were not. And Luke sort of embraces the fact that you can't be great all the time. And that seems to be the key, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, even at the end of Jedi, he kind of, starts raging out, and that's what ultimately kind of leads that film to a close.
Yeah.
So he does, he's kind of shown in the past that he's prone to it.
And the Yoda cameo was interesting in that respect as well, because Yoda was encouraging Luke to forget everything he learned, essentially, because it wasn't important anymore. And I get the impression he doesn't feel like Luke had the cojones to burn the tree down like he was threatening to. So he was like, yeah, I'll do it for you, it's fine. We don't need it anymore. It's not important. Although I did catch on the second viewing that Rey is hiding the books, the Jedi texts, in a drawer on the Millennium Falcon.
Well, they are like, it's a great scavenge. Like, it's like as part of a scavenger, it's like a basically nick any part for profit. That's they're worth a lot of portions. Like the Last Jedi thing. It's just standard, yeah. Like standard impulse.
Yeah, she sees something old and interesting and just wants to nick it. Yeah. This will fetch me a fortune on eBay. classic, slightly used Jedi texts. But I always got the impression that Yoda was, I don't know, maybe he wasn't, like, even in the prequels, he's not comfortable with the way the Jedi were operating at that point. It was just, I don't know, I suppose he just didn't want everybody to be murdered, but...
You think Hermit Yoda is true Yoda?
Oh, definitely. He's the kind of, he's a mischievous, wise old being, but his mischief always has meaning to it. So, he breaks he burns the tree down and laughs about it, but the true intent of that is stop lingering on the past. Think outside the box. Think about something new. Think about what will happen next. And it was the whole idea of the apprentice thing. That we are what they grow beyond. That was a great line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose it's interesting that they've, in relative terms, so much of the kind of Jedi order and teachings and stuff has just been undone in what's really quite a short period of time for what we know is actually been going on for a long time in the Star Wars universe galaxy. It's all kind of been reversed and undone now.
Yeah, but I don't really see it as a complete abandonment as well, because as bad as the prequels are, the one thing they do get right is the fact that the Jedi are idiots.
I think it's interesting that you've got all this Old Republic stuff and all the however long the Jedi Order's been going on for it all now to be thought of by the remaining Last Jedi and whoever else might be a Force user in the future. It's interesting that it has this new direction.
Yeah, everybody gets to blaze their own trail now and see what. And I suppose the original Jedi texts are there to learn from the mistakes of the past. Interpret them differently, find out what went wrong and try and change it up. I suppose that Rey will have to train a new generation of Jedi, which is a bit weird because she's done nothing. She doesn't know that much. But I suppose that's a good idea as well. She can start from scratch, but which means she'll probably have a few evil apprentices across the way. It's a difficult one. It opens up a can of worms just seeing how all this plays out, but I can understand why people get annoyed by the fact that, okay, all this stuff I've essentially devoted my fandom life to, about, reading about this stuff, thinking about the way the Jedi work, the Force works, the good side, the bad, the dark side, the light, all that stuff, is now thrown out the window because this new director decides to throw it out the window. But then I think it would have just stagnated if we just went through the same old rubbish, the same old, vague lessons, vague poetic lessons that don't really mean anything. I don't think we need more of that.
Yeah, it definitely leaves the door open for, we can have no idea what is to come next, really, because if this had been a carbon copy of Empire, or if it had, been enough of a facsimile, you'd have an idea of what the sort of resolution to this story would be. But I'm kind of optimistic about the fact that things have changed quite a lot.
Yeah, where does it go now? What happens next? Who knows? It could go anywhere.
I think it'd be super nice, if the end of this wasn't a side wins. It'd be really cool to see a resolution or a peacetime. The First Order don't have to, they don't have to be the villain. They can they can sort of join up. If you want to go for a theme of balance, maybe Kylo Ren and Rey could ultimately just work together for a better universe. That'd be nice. That'd be a really nice sort of we're not going to see the Rebels win or the First Order win. Maybe they just stop fighting and it ends in a peaceful resolution in which they both aim for the a more forward universe.
They all come together, sign treaties, and form a kind of galactic union.
Yeah, form a galactic union. I'd really like to see that. I think it'd be great if they just went. It's actually, we've got to a point where this is all just really dumb and stupid. And literally everything's been at war for ages. Why don't we just pool both of our things together? Yeah, they both have different viewing opinions, but the world does. The world has different viewing opinions, and ultimately it's not always at war all the time. I think it'd be a good way it'd be a new way to end a Star Wars thing. Let's go. And in the end, everyone decided to sort of just enter a peacetime. They can still disagree on stuff.
Star peace.
Yeah, just have a peace for a bit.
It's how they arrive at that would be the thing. How are you going to turn it into a Christmas tentpole action movie? If it's just going to be people signing a bit of paper, you would have to. They have to arrive at that through some significant loss, I think.
Yeah. But at the ultimate end of the the ninth film is that's just peacetime.
Yeah. Why are we fighting? What are we fighting about?
What's all this about? It's just again, this has happened so many times in this galaxy that one side has won and the other side has got incredibly bitter and rose up and a fraction state has become powerful, and
we know that they've got each other on speed dial. So what did you think of the sort of force telepathy conversations they had throughout this?
It's a good way to bring them together without bringing them together. So, how else do you have your essentially two leads, I suppose, have a conversation when they're on different sides of the galaxy? And this is how you do it. The Force provides, which I think should be the title of the third film or the ninth.
Terrible.
Yeah, so
never stop saying the Force provides, and it's the worst thing I could imagine.
The Force abides.
The Force abides. Yeah. So so it's a good way because you can have as much or as little interaction as you need to. You don't have Kylo Ren hiding about on Acto, just being like, I can't let Luke see me. He's like Rey's boyfriend sneaking in the window, with the disapproving dad in the other room, kind of.
And the guard dog Chewie outside.
That's it, yeah. Chewie, who definitely wants to rip his spine out because he killed his best friend.
Has anyone got any proper nitpicky comments? Like, for example, I Kylo Ren's costume is far better in the first film, and also his powers are far better. Like in this one, he's got like a weird sort of greasy looking tunic and like a cape. Like a proper cape, whereas in the first one he had like the scavenger hood and the shoulder cape, and he had the different texture on his arm things. He looked super cool, and like he could force freeze people, he could force freeze lasers. Where this way he doesn't go crazy force wise. Like he does some force pulls and some force pushes.
Well, what I know is, I'm sure there probably is an explanation for this, but he drops his mask before he kills Han Solo. And then he runs off into the snowy woods without his mask.
And then some guy has to run back and pick his mask.
Yeah, someone has to go and collect that for him because then Starkiller Base sort of implodes, and he's got this. It is the same mask because it's all kind of beat up and stuff. So someone had to go back and fetch that for him.
Maybe the beat up masks is like stylish, stylized. He's because he's such a special snowflake. What he's done is he's crafted, hipster style.
He wears
damage and all of his
ripped jeans and authentic battle damage mask.
Or in the wreckage of Starkiller Base, the mask was floating around, just on.
I think he's got his own personal mask retriever because he had Darth Vader's helmet that someone must have nicked out that funeral pyre at the end of Jedi. So he's definitely got someone. He's got someone else on speed dial that can be like, mask, need it now.
I'm glad they got rid of the mask though, because it's again, it takes him away from being the Darth Vader analog, doesn't it?
Yeah. Also, it's super convenient. Like, do the Empire have every type of weapon on board their Star Destroyers? Because they land on Crate, and it just so happens to be great for them to have AT-ATs and a big gun on wheels. Whereas if they landed on if it was like an Acto planet, it's like, do we have all the boats ready? Or if it was like Coruscant and there's like a floating city, do they have every possible outcome planet wise as a weapon just with them?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I suppose maybe they just have unpacking crates where they can just build this stuff. I mean, the Star Destroyers are massive, so why not?
Yeah.
When he chopped Snoke in half, the lightsaber ignites through him. Did he kind of wiggle it around and then pull it towards himself?
Yeah.
Because it would be he'd still be kind of attached at the back. That's my nitpick.
That's when it hit. It probably just like smashed into his spine and then pulled forward. So like the skin of the back would have just sort of slithered forward, I guess, and ripped.
It just snapped off. Yeah.
He held it in place or he removed it with the force. I don't know. There you go.
What did you think of that whole sequence? I mean, I thought the fight was good.
Yeah, I mean that was all the best bit of the film. Like from Snoke just throwing him around and whacking people on the head with lightsabers, and then death of Snoke and the footload of ninjas. Like I was saying before, structurally wise, that should have been the end of the movie because that's the best bit. All the things have been building up to that one moment, and then afterwards, it's like nothing never gets to that height again, and it's kind of like the rest of it's just sort of like a all or nothing.
What do you think of the, obviously Snoke was this mysterious hologram in The Force Awakens, projecting himself giant, turns out to be kind of regular, person-sized. And then he's dispatched, chopped in half. Do you think that was a letdown, or do you think it was just interesting, another kind of...
It was like a cool moment. It was like because nobody expected that they'd get rid of him so quickly.
Another misdirect that he's done away with in the middle of the movie.
I can't imagine a scenario where there would have been a revelatory answer about who Snoke is that would have satisfied me. So I was fine with the fact that he's just some powerful evil guy. Yeah.
Well, when he's on in the next one, he'll come back also as like I think there's going to be a Luke Force Ghost and a Snoke Force Ghost. But this Snoke Force Ghost will be because in these versions we've only ever seen him as like an incredibly injured, like twisted old sort of worn out thing, and he can come back as like he'll come back in his prime, and that's when we'll find out whoever he is.
I mean, I don't see what Snoke's identity or his backstory or whatever as a mystery from The Force Awakens anyway. It's just information you don't know yet.
Yeah,
And
I think that they might have been going for the, like in the original trilogy, what a lot of people really liked about it was that there were just these references just, tossed out there, the Clone Wars, the Jundland Wastes, all this kind of stuff that never really gets explained, and so it sort of builds the world. And I think now people are a bit spoiled because there's all these kind of explanations and explorations of people's backstories, who they're related to, where they've come from, how they got these injuries, and so much of that was kind of undone in this, where you don't learn about Snoke. Rey turns out to be, not related to anyone. Luke didn't have an amazing life after the fall of the Empire. It's interesting that they went that direction. But I agree with you, Craig, in that there's probably no satisfying answer to any of these things that would have, made 100% of people happy.
Yeah, other than obviously it's divisive because people have sat there talking about Force Awakens for the past 2 years, and ultimately all that chat they had about, where all these things come from is, rendered moot because nothing comes from anywhere. But the thing is, the clue is actually in Force Awakens if you think about it. I mean, Leia casually name drops Snoke as if he's no real big deal. The only thing he's done of note is corrupt their son. But they're not talking about him as if he's this huge galactic threat that they need to worry about. He's just, he stole our son from us, and that's the worst thing he's done. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that they almost had to go in this direction because he is killed off. He's not mentioned, or there's not really much more of his backstory. Complete opposite to Palpatine, who we get kind of the full explanation, and also see him, ultimately become the big bad because, he wasn't really all that present in until about halfway through the original trilogy, and then he becomes this kind of ultimate baddie. Yeah. And you couldn't have done the same thing with Snoke because then it's just Emperor 2.0.
Yeah, and that would be boring because we've already seen it.
Yep.
And they did the throne room, the riff on the throne room where it's like, oh look, here's your fleet, watch me gun it down. So you get that, and then that's dealt with, and he's dead, and that's dealt with, and then Kylo Ren's whole ethos is about letting go of the past, so it's fitting that he's ultimately the one to kill Snoke because he's realising that Snoke's possibly holding him back, and essentially every time that something goes wrong reminds him of where he came from, which is not what Kylo Ren wants. He wants to let go of his parents, and killing Han Solo is a sign of that, but the fact that Snoke keeps reminding him of this is probably counter to anything that he actually wants out of life at this point.
I think it's super, the whole message of this film is that you get rid of the past, move forward in the future, and then we're going to get a Han Solo movie. Nobody wants it. Nobody, it's the most unwanted Star Wars movie ever. Nobody wants to see it. Nobody knows what's going to happen in it. Apparently it's out in 5 months, but we haven't even seen a picture of them. Yeah. Do away with the past, move forward, but also don't forget the past, because, like you said, we spent billions on this, and we're going to milk everything. We're going to milk as much of the past and as much of it as we can. It's a weird mixed message system.
My concern is, and it's going to sound like a broken record, because every time I talk about J.J. Abrams, I talk about how profoundly disappointed I am in him at all times. I mean, it's all par for the course now. I fully expect him to undo a lot of what Rian Johnson did in his next film. So Rey's parents are going to be revealed to be whoever, Snoke is going to be revealed to be a reincarnated whoever, and all this stuff. I think that, I'm worried that he'll suddenly make people important in inverted commas when they didn't need to be, and might just cling to the past once again. So and if he does that, it'll be a really weird. I don't know, if you look at the graph of the trilogy in terms of adherence to the past, so it would just kind of it would drop down or rise up for Last Jedi, and then it would go back down or up again for whatever the next one's called, because it's contradicting itself. I mean, I'm not saying Abrams will do that. That's just based on what I've seen from him before. That's the kind of stuff he likes to do. He likes to introduce something, then point out that it was a red herring all along.
I think they just have to buy into this new cast of characters all in, because that's what this whole trilogy. I mean, there have been a lot of references, a lot of the criticism about Force Awakens was how derivative it was, but it has been all about setting up these new characters and taking it in a new direction. So I agree, it would be very disappointing if they reverted back to type and didn't end this because there have been so many surprises that we've talked about in The Last Jedi, so many misdirects, so many opportunities to kind of do things in a very familiar way that have been taken in a different direction, and I think they'd be wise to kind of top it all off in a similar fashion. Yeah,
and I quite like the idea that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson are kind of working against each other as well. So J.J. Abrams is obviously it won't be like that, because you have to have this kind of franchise synergy, and someone's got to be in charge of making sure that A leads to B leads to C. Even if you have, in the same way that the Marvel movies, everything has to build to Infinity War in some way, but you can tell whatever story in between. The fact is, there'll be some overseer who will be stopping major revelations from contradicting what they want out of something, what they want out of the franchise as a whole. So I know that it won't be like that, but I quite like the idea that, in my head, that J.J. Abrams is like, oh, Rey could be important, this whole vision that, with Obi-Wan Kenobi voice clips, that points to her parentage, or does it, and then Rian Johnson's like, nope, that was all rubbish. So her parents are nobody, Snoke's nobody, the rebellion or the resistance are all but destroyed. I've killed all these people. Luke Skywalker's dead. So next film, I'm leaving you with essentially nothing. And then Abrams going to be like, well, I'm just going to bring all this back. Then
Abrams is going to go back down that cliffside and pick up the lightsaber that Johnson just threw over his shoulder.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and that ends up being a metaphor for this whole film, doesn't it? That's what Rian Johnson's doing. But it's cool. I like it when a franchise changes, I like it when something's risky like this, because it does play around with everything that and it never delivers anything I expect. I mean, even at the end when Luke shows up and he's not really there, but you don't know at that point, you expect Kylo Ren to be like, I'm going to go down and fight him, because that's an honourable samurai type thing to do. And he's like, nope, shoot him. And you know,
on the immediate reactions pod, Isaac mentioned that in the Avengers films, they're always kind of formulaic, and you know who's going to win. And I wonder if Isaac, do you still feel like this is good because it's in that different sort of direction to expectations and never knowing what's around the corner?
Well, yeah, it's good that we're at no point we're certain about anything, and I think it'll carry on being just as uncertain. I think that the first, because he just needed to make sure that Star Wars is going to be profitable. So they were like, we can't go crazy initially. I imagine now that crazy is it's divisive, but it's profitable because I think it's just reached 500 million.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so they can sort of spread their wings and have fun with it, especially if they're making the terrible bland films in between each one.
I suppose they've got that safety net.
Yeah, they've really got the safety net of the Han Solo movie and the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie and the Lobot movie or whatever. They're coming after them.
Gonk
movie.
Yeah, Boba Fett movie's got to be coming at some point. I don't want to see that either, you know. And that's it. And so what I think you'll get is, so alternate years, you've got a main franchise, I suppose, and then you've got this kind of sub-franchise of all the anthology stuff. So this year we've got, we'll say this year because it is nearly 2018, we've got Han Solo, or Solo, A Star Wars Story, which is a horrible title. I still think it's going to be pushed back to Christmas. I can't believe it hasn't been yet. You know, they're going to release it a couple of weeks after Infinity War. No way. That's just not going to happen. So, Disney competing with themselves, which, you know, when they're the only film studio out there, I suppose they will be. But yeah, so you'll have Solo, and then you'll have whatever episode 9 is, then presumably Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then whatever Rian Johnson's first film is in his trilogy, which in theory could be substituting for 10, 11 and 12 now, because at the end of the day this whole episodic 9-part story almost doesn't matter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is being brought to a close, isn't it? You know, and the only way to bring it to a close is by throwing out everything that makes it happen. You know, all the cogs in that 9 chapter machine. I mean, the only thing left is Leia, and she's not left at all because she can't be in it anymore.
I think that we've said that the spin-offs and the sort of Star Wars story type movies don't feel as if they're going in as inspirational a direction, because it's, you know, going back to all this old stuff that we're saying now we want to move on from that. But I think that Rogue One surprised quite a few people and took a few chances. You know, it was kind of a different sort of Star Wars story, the way that ended. Obviously there's still a lot of stuff in it that was referred back to the original trilogies, and it fits, you know, perfectly into the very beginning of the original trilogy. But I think there's maybe a bit more hope for some of these spin-offs than we might be giving them credit for.
I think as long as they don't use them to name drop whoever has sat in the background of a scene, you know, that kind of stuff. I think
no, I want that sweet Wilro Hood reference. I want to see that ice cream machine.
How did he get that ice cream machine? What is that ice cream machine? Maybe it is just an ice cream machine. Yeah. I think, you know, the universe has so much scope to it that you can tell stories about anything. I mean, I didn't get too deeply mired in the expanded universe because I'm only one person and I spend a lot of time reading Star Trek novels, so I can't be in too many expanded universes at once. There's just not enough time. There's not enough of me to go around. So, but from what I can tell, they do have comic books about characters you've never heard of and might never hear of because it's, you know, it's set light years away and, you know, 1,000 years ago and all that stuff. You know, it's they do tell just random, or they at least used to tell random stories about random people. I mean, if you look at like Kyle Katarn, didn't he show up in a lot of external media and he didn't really have any connection to anything? I mean, he was there for some of the events, but he's not significant.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an original character that was allowed to go in his own direction. So they could do stuff like that with the anthology stuff. and not connect it to the specific universe-altering events that we've already seen. But so far they're not planning to do that, so until they start doing that, I won't really be interested in them, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, they will eventually, because now that they own everything, and Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to kind of spiral on forever and ever, as will Star Wars. So we're going to have some of those ones we're worried about, you know, the kind of well-worn characters, backstories no one ever wanted to see, but they will eventually get onto the good stuff.
Max Rebo, The Untold Story.
Kitster. A life.
Yeah, it's good. Nah, I don't know. Old Republic, that's an era I'd like to see again. Just saying. It's not decanonised in my head, because nothing so far contradicts anything established in the Old Republic. So. And the animated show, which I totally recommend, Star Wars Rebels, is kind of slowly sneaking stuff in like that. I mean, it's on its last season now, but still, there's still a few episodes left. They could do it. Bring Darth Revan back into normal canon. I don't know. That's just a bit fanboyish, but I do want that. Yeah, so we don't know where the franchise is going next, which is exciting. I mean, I know we're going to get Han Solo, the checklist, the winning the Falcon, the card game, the Kessel Run, etc. All that. That's
getting that life debt off Chewie.
Yeah.
I'm still hoping that at no point in the film he ever actually flies he buys the Millennium Falcon 5 minutes before he meets Luke and Obi-Wan, and everything about that is just a lie. It's just like, oh yeah, this hunk of junk can do the Kessel Run, and he's just making it up just because he wants to sail. And then the rest of the original trilogy and all beyond, all the trick, like the pattern tricks he does, was just pure luck.
Yeah, well, he definitely wins it from Lando, or that's what he says.
Yeah.
Well, can you believe him? He's a scruffy-looking nerf herder.
Lando does say he lost it to him, so unless they're both lying.
They're both liars.
And where is Lando?
See, I think Canto Blight was the ideal point to have him. Just an old Billy D. Williams, casually scamming some long conning some some big millionaire. So I think his ideal point of return has kind of been used up, really.
Truly belong here with us among the alpacas.
Well, I read an interview with Rian Johnson where he said the only place he could have used Lando Calrissian was in that sequence, was in the whole, and it would have been DJ's role, although he wasn't comfortable writing him as someone that would betray them, even though it would be a surprise, but I think it would be a step too far for so many people.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't believe that Lando would betray them for money.
He could have been the one they were supposed to get. They could have get this dude, he's really good. And it was Lando, and then they ended up just missing him by seconds or something.
Yeah.
So we can't find him, we'll go with this guy. And then Lando turns up with a can of Coke or whatever, and he's like, hey, where did he go or whatever. And then there's a comedy shrug, and goes off to
gets lightsabered and falls down a shaft.
Yeah, somebody just lightsabers him.
So instead of that Clark Gable-esque guy on the table, it could have been Billy.
Yeah, it could have been Lando.
Yeah.
Lando's
and then they get
there
arrested.
He is. Yeah. And then some guys just come up and he just bolts immediately. He just undignifiedly tucks all his coins into his folded up shirt like a kangaroo pouch, and punches a dude in the head, and then just jumps over the table and runs away.
No, Lando always has to have the cape.
Oh yeah, tuck up in his big
cape fluttering behind him.
Yeah. Or just pulls the cape over someone's head and then punches them in the head. So like the Arkham Batman style stun.
Yeah, well, of course, we're going to see plenty of Lando in a few months. Not Billy D. Williams Lando, but still.
Yeah, because of these... Whichever the young Glover is playing it.
Donald Glover, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, Donald. Yeah, Danny Glover's the old one. The Lethal Weapon one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We made it just in time!
Alright, start again. I remember everything from there.
Seriously, so what did you guys say so far? For the viewers or listeners who's joining us, here's the 60-second roundup.
So someone's going to... This isn't going out live. Someone's going to download this podcast and skip
You
to
wish this was going
Choose
live.
a random point to start it.
You wish this was going live.
So for those of you who don't recognise the voice, Natalie has now joined us from the Force. The Force provides...
There's a blue glow around her. I think she might be a Force ghost.
What's a Force ghost?
Oh no, she's just been drinking Blue Wicked.
What? I'll have you know that it was no sort of event. It was like a weird vodka Bacardi punch with peaches in it.
It was blue though, right?
No, it's just really cold outside, guys.
Oh, that'll be it.
Oh, hello.
Hey.
This is maybe like the most glam I've ever looked in my life while podcasting. Normally
you
I'm
don't
just
dress
in my
up for podcasting every time we do this?
Normally I'm just
in
in
a
like
suit
my
right
pajamas or something.
Just as well we're periscoping it.
So hi you guys. Who's with us tonight?
You and Thingy here, and the other one.
Okay. Woohoo, Thingy and the other one. Love it.
Yeah, that's a good guest list.
Okay, so where were you actually at though in real life?
Oh, this is going to be an edit.
Have you talked about Rey and Kylo Ren's chemistry? Because I totally want
We haven't talked about Reylo yet.
What?
No, we haven't talked about the random shit.
You've been talking for an hour. What the hell have you been talking about?
How Lando could nick a load of coins from the casino. Like
Throw his cape over someone's head,
how
punch
would
them.
how would use his cape as a weapon.
And that's all you've talked about?
Pretty much.
For the last hour and a half. That's
Alpacas, we mentioned alpacas a couple of times.
Alpacas.
What about like the super cute things that Chewie
the
wrote?
porgs. We've not mentioned the porgs.
We have not mentioned the porgs.
What about like the lovely ice foxes?
We've not mentioned
Crystal
them.
foxes, yeah.
They're also worth a look because they're really cute.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
I'm glad the porgs weren't Ewoks. Like, they weren't the equivalent of Ewoks. They were a very small part of the film.
And they're cute. They had some funny moments, some sad moments, a to cry.
We talked a little bit about Luke's fish servants.
Oh yeah, they were like so reminiscent. I think of like early Star Wars.
And his weird Nessie cow.
Oh yeah, I actually was saying to somebody, I've got to leave early because I'm podcasting Star Wars, and they were like, oh god, it shouldn't be a Star Wars movie, and I was like, why the hell not? And they also said that the milking the sea cow thing was also weird.
I like Mark Hamill's like maniacal expression as he drinks the milk, as it kind of dribbles down his chin.
He's sick of blue milk.
He's moved on to green milk now.
Yeah, and did you guys see that there's a petition online for this to be? It's asking for. It's got 8,500 signatures so far, and I think they need 10,000 for the ticket to Disney. Did you see it?
Yeah, although apparently the guy who made the petition has backpedaled on it.
Well, of course he should, because it's a load of baloney. Like, it was something like, oh, if I get 10,000 signatures, we'll submit it to Disney, and then they can, like, remake this episode, and just push back episode 9 or whatever, and I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
Because, yeah, the guy said that he was just out of surgery, and he was heavily medicated, and he was disappointed, and he lashed out, and he's not comfortable with the negative direction all of this is going in, which, fair play to him. I don't think it excuses anyone who signed the petition, because...
I know, well, they've probably got, like, another leader now, do you know what I mean?
Well, that's the whole thing. There's always someone rising up to take the place.
I was like, why would you... Like, you're not the creator. You're not anyone who's got any of the, like, the creative leads. Like, you have to listen to the people who actually wrote it. Do you know what I mean?
Also,
if they say it's a Star Wars, it's a Star Wars. But also, it is Star Wars. It's like ultimate Star Wars.
Well, I also think that fans are entitled to take what they want from a franchise that they enjoy. So they can, look at me with Into Darkness, right? I hate that film, so I just don't watch it. I just pretend it doesn't exist.
Oh my god, your Into Darkness has become like my Spider-Man.
What do you mean become? I've been like this for years. I'm never getting over this. But the thing is, I haven't made my peace with it.
No, you definitely have not. We have to listen to this every time we meet up.
Didn't you start a petition to get that decanonised?
Well, I didn't have to in the end because Simon Pegg already just made that happen. So that was great. But like the thing about Into Darkness is, whenever I think about the J.J. Abrams verse of Star Trek movies, I watched the first one, the first 10 minutes of the second one, and then I watched the third one. And that is that franchise for me. But the thing is, with this film, if you don't think it's Star Wars, fair enough, you're entitled to think that. Just don't watch it. Like, don't ruin it for people that think it, that are happy to accept it.
I'm really happy for it to be Star Wars because I think that it's ultimate Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't like this, so therefore it shouldn't exist is a really bizarre stance to take.
Yeah, they sound like arseholes.
Well, kind of, yeah.
Did you hear that? The 8,500 people that signed that petition, you're arseholes.
We're trying to reconcile that position with also still hating Into Darkness.
No, but the thing is, I think you can pick and choose what you want to watch. The thing I don't like.
I don't understand how any Star Wars fan can be disappointed with it. Like, there are things that you're a bit like, oh god, this maybe has gone a wee bit longer than it should have. Why are they still holed up in this cave? Why is that guy still saying, oh, we're almost there? And then they're not, because they're clearly miles away from doing anything. Some of it drags a wee bit, but I still totally loved it.
We brought it up earlier where it was, we mentioned the fact that I can see why people would be disappointed in, what they maybe did to certain characters. I mean, I like that it was taken a different direction, but other people might just want them to stay where they are or stay the thing that they remember. But and that may be fine for them, but the fact is that they don't get it. And, I don't
look at how much time has passed. Look at how much time has passed in the stories. Look at how much time has passed from, young Luke Skywalker to current Skywalker. It can't stay the same that people have pictured it being. It can't stay static in, a particular moment. It has to move forward.
But if people want that and don't get it, and then...
Well, you can't have it, so get over it. This is the way it's going. It's working for them. I really enjoyed it. And you need to just all grow with it. Everyone needs to grow with the new direction that they're taking in. And I think they've considered a lot, and they've done an amazing job, I think, establishing a lot of the new characters. And I really want to know more about them now. Do you know what I mean? It's got to move on.
Yeah, I completely
It's the circle
agree.
of life.
But also, people are entitled to not like anything for their own reasons. That's fine.
Right.
Yeah, but don't go trying to destroy it for other people.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Jobbies.
That's the problem here. It's not the not liking it, it's the tearing it apart for others. I don't like this, so therefore it shouldn't be canon anymore.
It's just it's just the reasons that I read, that they didn't like that Luke died, they didn't like that all of this, whatever happened, and I just was like, that's really what makes it such a great movie. It's the Toy Story 3 effect. I think we should just call it that now. Toy Story 3 effect.
Yep.
Yeah. But, I don't know, I thought it was brilliant.
I'm in that camp, definitely. And we did have a section in the agenda for the extreme reactions that audiences have for this film.
Yeah.
So that is what we're talking about at this point. And I think, I don't want to... I don't want to be saying that people shouldn't not like this.
Shouldn't not like it.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
What? They should not like it. So they should like it?
I'm not saying that people shouldn't dislike this. If they don't like it, they're completely validated in doing so. And if you can frame some kind of rational argument for why you don't like it, then fine. And that's what we're trying to frame, a rational argument for why we do like it. So
yeah.
I think there's an interesting discourse that doesn't happen on the internet these days. Where you've got the hate camp and you've got the love camp, and then there's no real space in between, which is, weirdly enough, this film is about the truth being somewhere in between, or at least partially. So I think it's interesting to have that healthy debate, but you can't have that healthy debate. It's hard, because we've done quite a bit of nitpicking tonight, and it's this isn't a crap film because of that thing we're nitpicking, but it does, it's not a flawless film. What is? And
how many films are flawless? Do you know what I mean?
There's no such thing. Nothing's
Right.
flawless.
So whatever happens, and especially with how large the Star Wars fan base is, and the the small margin people out with that, like, people are always going to find fault with it, or it's not going to carry on the way that they want it to, because they've like fantasized about it for about 30 years now. But you have to just enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is. And it's a good movie, and in fact I'd actually say it's great. I really liked it.
What we said earlier was what a lot of fans seem to want is kind of variations on a theme. So what you're essentially going to get is a looped variation on everything you've seen before over and over again, which certainly doesn't interest me as a viewer.
I don't know, I feel like I could keep watching it.
I was trying to consider it in the context, and we have mentioned how it compares to Empire, how it has all these kind of references to the original trilogy, etc. And I was wondering, like, what people thought of Empire when that first came out, because obviously Star Wars was a massive hit, and then Empire would have been, highly anticipated, and it ends in a way that, one of the criticisms of it is it can't stand alone because it's this middle part.
Yeah.
You have to have Jedi as the conclusion.
Yeah.
But obviously now people think that Empire is, the best one of any of them, probably. And so, there's been extreme reactions to this one, but I don't know, I can't, until you've seen the conclusion to this story, you can't really have a final reaction. And of course we've had our immediate reactions, 15 minutes after seeing it, at 3 a.m, and now we've had these kind of a chance to reflect upon it. Some of us have seen it again, some of us will see it again, and we'll see it again and again before we even get the conclusion to this. So there's plenty of time to form an opinion, or to have your opinion kind of augmented depending on how you feel it fits in with this trilogy, with the overall universe, with the original saga, everything.
I'd go see this one again, like, definitely. And when we saw it and we had The Force Awakens before it, and you've got all the music with it, and all the music, was brought up with all the different themes, and Yoda's there, like, do you know what I mean? They've got Luke Skywalker back properly, and I really enjoyed it. And a lot of their new visuals as well, like, when Rey is exploring her powers on the island and she finds herself in that hole. I don't know, there was a really bold new move in a lot of how they portrayed visuals for that scene and stuff, and I really thought it was a really good move for the movies.
I really loved the whole the crate battle visually for the red and white, opposing each other, and it just looked amazing, especially after there'd been so much carnage on the battlefield. Just the smatterings of red all over the place, and then
when they're on the salt place.
Yeah.
I like that for us to understand that it's not snow, they needed that guy to touch it with his fingers, put it to his mouth and go, salt.
Turn to the camera and say, it's not Hoth.
I was like, thank you, that man, I would never have known what was going on here.
And seeing the Falcon fly underground as well, like in the big red cave, was super.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. Their fighting scenes were actually, I really liked them as well. There was the one where Rey and Kylo Ren are squaring off in front of the big bad guy.
Snoke.
And they're in like that red room.
Yeah.
And it's like void of like any sort of detail, and it was quite stylized, like quite particularly, and the battle scenes were great there. I really visually enjoyed them quite a lot, and obviously there's that tension that they've created between Kylo Ren and Rey, where you're like, oh, what's going to happen, and it was great. Another good visual scene, I think.
Yeah.
I want to go back and see that again like that, and Rey sort of experimenting and then falling down that hole.
Yeah.
I want to go back and see particular scenes again.
One thing we actually haven't talked about yet, it's probably something you'll be very interested in talking about yourself, Natalie, is the role of Leia in this film. I mean, we've mentioned her, but obviously this is the last time we'll ever see Leia, unless they do something.
Is it? Because I thought she'd recorded parts of the next episode as well. I thought they had.
They haven't started. They only decided on a director a few weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because when she passed away, I thought that they'd said that they had clips that they could use for 8 and 9.
No, they definitely said she'd finished her role in this one and that they weren't changing it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but they hadn't done any work for 9 yet. I mean, I suppose there's maybe a scene that was cut they could use.
Yeah, they might sort of snip in or something.
Aye, but she's very much alive at the end of this film, and she's with the Resistance, and she escapes, but there's no finality to her story. She's still there, and it's going to be very odd.
It was very emotional watching it, I think, and I think it would have been for a lot of Star Wars fans actually watching this entire movie, because it does hark back so much to the earlier episodes, especially when R2-D2 plays the clip of Leia. Yeah.
That's a cheap shot, says Luke.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's true, but it was like a nice little nod to her, and everything that the team have been through together, and it was quite a beautiful little moment, and it made you laugh and really sad at the same time. So yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with her, actually.
Strange, because she took such a back seat in this one, because she was kind of out of it for a lot of the action, and then she comes back, and then they're going to have to find some way to
they did say
round that off.
They said
blown out into space. I was like, holy crap.
I thought that was the end of it.
I thought that was the end, and I was like, oh my god, but then she uses the Force, and whoa, where's this been the whole time? But well,
there's always been hints that she's got that ability inside her, so it's fine. Yeah.
Well,
really
you'd expect her to, but it's her first proper show on screen, though, I think, of using
other than
and,
talking to Luke in Empire Strikes Back.
She communicates using it, but never anything.
Yeah, but they're also
surviving the vacuum of space.
Aside from being twins are known to have that sort of ability anyway, so that's not really.
You don't think that's related to the Force whatsoever?
Obviously, you can say it is, but I was just like, oh, twinnies. But I think that's her first proper display of using the Force. But I know that they said that they're not going to have anyone replace her. I think that they just won't include her at all. I think it'll just be that she's sort of omitted. I don't think there will be anything. I think they'll just move in a
They might do some kind of tribute to her in some way,
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. I think it'll be...
Rey's going to get into an X-Wing. Leia will also get into an X-Wing, and then they'll reach a fork in the road, and Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth will be just crooning away, and then Leia will just drive off down a dusty road, and that'll be the end. It'll be a really nice send-off for her.
I don't know what they're going to do.
Probably not that.
Well, they might. You've probably just given them ideas. They're probably just we were wondering what we're going to do.
What I reckon will happen is episode 9 will take place in 5 years' time, and she'll have just died between. They're like, oh yeah, she died.
Oh yeah. Since our last episode, these are all the things that have happened.
Yeah.
You'll have the opening crawl will start with Princess Leia has died.
She's well dead.
General Leia. She's known as General Leia.
They'll restore her as princess.
Well,
it's J.J. Abrams. But I thought she was well used in this film. I know she does bow out for quite a bit, but the thing is, I wonder if, obviously, if they knew that she was going to die before the film was released, I wonder if they'd have flipped the sacrifice scene, so instead of Admiral Holdo doing it, it would have been Leia doing that.
No,
punch,
Yeah, and who the hell was that? She was a bit of a jobby.
I thought she was okay, actually. I quite like her as a more measured opposition to Poe Dameron, where he was just like, we need to do something now. We need to mobilise and do something, and she's like, no, be patient. I have a plan, and he's like,
yeah, but her plan got everyone killed. No one remembers that her plan actually messed them up.
It didn't, though. It was only because it was actually the Finn plan that messed them up, because they end up meeting up with a guy that betrayed them and told told the First Order where the transports were hiding.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I love that guy.
So it is kind of Poe Dameron's fault.
Kind of everyone's fault. It was a stupid plan, I guess. They all suck.
I think it was better than Poe's plan, I suppose.
I think it was interesting to see a plan fail because you know, none have really failed to that sort of level before, where so many people die. I guess planets, but like other than that.
But they really are quite reduced in number by the end.
Yeah, they are. I think it's really tense. Like, I really want to know what happens next.
There's only a falcon's worth of resistance.
Falcon's worth. It's like, what was it like? What happens? Where's that happens? Another movie? Guardians of the Galaxy? No, Thor. The end of Thor. Their entire planet on a ship. Maybe they'll cross worlds.
It's a much bigger ship, though. A lot more people.
Either way, you've got all of your people on a ship. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not a planet.
And it's quite good that the rebellion is reborn inside the Millennium Falcon as well.
Oh, I just don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe they don't do it. Maybe the dark side wins.
My prediction is that J.J. Abrams will bring it all to a predictable conclusion.
An earth-shattering kaboom.
We'll see. There'll be another Death Star in the next one.
Maybe 5.
They show up every couple of films, you know. But, I liked the use of Leia. Carrie Fisher really matured into the role, I suppose. You know, just she's very good as that kind of leadery general thing, and I love her back and forth with Poe as well. I think they have a really good dynamic. Just where she slaps him in the face and is like, "You're demoted." That was really good.
I thought it was really sad when she's like in a coma. And you know, like, it must have been really hard, I think. I just kept on thinking about, like, the opening or whatever when they, like, showed it. It must have been really hard for them all, because that's what happened, you know?
Does she have any more or less screen time than Luke does, though? I wonder if you matched it up.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Feels kind of even.
Yeah.
I can't, like, there's a lot of scenes with both of them.
Yeah, and the last scene they got together was very nice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Aww.
It was so understated as well. They just talked about her hair.
Yeah.
It's like, I know, it looks nice, and then it was like, I'm going to go kill your son now. See you later. What? That was as you do. You know, that's the kind of conversations that you have.
Classic Jeremy Kyle episode.
Yeah, let's not talk about all that awkward kissing we used to do. Yeah, it's awkward. Let's just forget about all that.
Mark Hamill is so cute.
I love Mark Hamill, and the thing is, I think since Star Wars, he's become, I mean, mentioned earlier, he's become such a personality in his own right, you know, famous for his voice acting and famous for being just great on Twitter.
I don't want him to be famous for voice acting, he's really cute.
But he is famous for voice acting, so...
Well, I should do more stuff.
So too bad.
Too bad, yeah. He appears in live action in the first 3 seasons of The Flash.
Did he not voice like a Transformer?
He voices the Joker. He's famous for that.
Oh.
I don't know about
Nimoy voiced the Transformer.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I knew it was like a space person.
I'm not sure that... Maybe Mark Hamill did. He has done a lot.
I feel like it's the kind of thing that he would have done.
Yeah. He tends to voice villains. Yeah, he did the Hobgoblin in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, the Joker in the 90s Batman cartoon, various other voice roles that I've seen kicking about, you know. He's interesting. I like Mark Hamill. And he's been really good in the 2 years before this film, you know, just trolling people on Twitter, saying things like, you know, his relationship with Daisy Ridley, they were like father and daughter, and he was like, oops, said too much.
Oh my god, that revelation.
Yeah,
I was like, no, this can't be the truth. And he's like, you've known it the whole time. And I was like, no, it's not true.
That's impossible.
It's impossible.
He has been in Transformers. I had a quick Google.
Oh.
Yes.
He's Woodrow Burns, King Charles, and Viacom.
Take that, everybody. I know Mark Hamill's Transformers
I thought it would have been Luke Beachcomber.
Anyway, I knew he would have been in Transformers.
Yeah.
Ha.
No, we discussed the revelation. There we go. That's the new term. I like that she's nobody, or comes from nothing. I think that's good.
What did you think about all the slave children as well, who've all got, like, the Force?
Well, at least one of them has. The rest might not. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, he's probably going to become a bad guy, though. They all do.
I don't think we'll see that kid again. I think it's just to tell you that the scope is widening. That's all.
Yeah, that the Force is actually not all reliant on her.
The Force provides.
The Force goes to bed again.
The Force awakens. The Force needs 5 more minutes. I think we've covered everything we want to cover, perhaps. Unless anybody has anything like massively significant they want to throw in as kind of a final thing that we didn't talk about. Because otherwise we'll hear all.
I'm just going to say to people that if you go and see it, lighten up a bit. Because you're taking things far too seriously. It's a movie. Enjoy it. Think nothing of it afterwards, I guess. No, that's not true. Do think about it. But you don't have to be a dickwad about it and put a petition online saying that it should be redone. Because it's brilliant.
Yeah. Accept all new things. Or don't. But don't ruin other people's fun.
Yeah.
Not accepting.
You're entitled to your opinion.
Yes.
Keep it to yourself. No, that's not true. Do it, whatever. But just, I don't know. I just take offence to that. Because I'm like, a lot of people were involved in that. A lot of people worked on it. Everything's been carefully considered. And I thought it was actually like a feast for fans to watch.
Yeah, they're not going to spend $200 million remaking this film. And
a visual feast. Well, why would they? Like,
No.
do you know what I mean? They wouldn't have made it if they thought it was going to be actual pants.
I don't know. It seems to be Warner Brothers' stance on making DC films.
Right, that's
know
DC.
Yeah,
Like, that's DC. That's
we know
honestly...
this is going to be rubbish, but we're going to make it anyway.
Yeah, but that's because it's DC.
It's fine though. So anything else that we didn't cover that anybody wants to discuss?
What are you doing for Christmas?
Listening to Christmas podcasts.
Christmas podcast in all stores now. Yeah. What am I doing for Christmas? I don't feel like this should be part of the podcast.
Oh, that's so weird. Well, we might have an announcement for... I'm not going to say the next podcast because we haven't done anything yet, but in a couple of podcasts' time, we might have an announcement to make. That seems kind of weird, eh?
Yeah, it does. That's
So, keep your eyes open on the Facebook page for announcements in the new year because something's going to rock you.
A podcast-related announcement?
Yeah!
might have been teased months and months ago.
It's been teased and forgotten about, and by the time it comes out, you won't give a shit. But we're still going to do it, and we hope that you'll listen to it.
It's not this Bollywood thing again, is it?
It's not.
No, say no more. Say no more.
It's not, but it's a secret. We'll tease you with more details, maybe on the next podcast.
Perhaps the next podcast will be this thing.
We'll see.
Yeah. Won't hold your breath.
Okay. Yes, so there's that. Angus, anything remaining that we didn't discuss that you want to throw in there into the melting pot?
No, I don't think so. I'm going to keep reflecting, ruminating on this, comparing, contrasting, imagining what the future for this trilogy will be. Saying hi to Paul.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Kate. And Sandra. Hello.
Yeah. So I'm going to reflect, and I'm expecting my opinions to change and augment a little bit, and I'm looking forward to kind of finding out and discovering more about this, because there's probably plenty that I didn't notice. So I've only seen it once, and I'm willing to go back and discover lots of new things about it.
Shout out to your mum, by the way.
I would shout out to mine, but she won't listen to this. She doesn't like Star Wars,
To all of the mothers out there, we wish you a Merry Christmas.
Yes. We are recording this before Christmas, and hopefully it'll be uploaded before Christmas.
We didn't specify which year.
Yeah, this is true. Merry all Christmases from now until the end of time.
Yeah, it's evergreen.
Yeah. Isaac, have you got anything that we didn't bring up that you wanted to discuss?
I saw some actually. I can't remember. I'll probably mentioned a thing. I don't know. Nah, nothing particularly. It's good.
My parting thought is a bit of a nitpick. It would be my parting thought. It'll be one of my parting thoughts. Why don't they just use the light speed attack all the time? Just build a remote fleet and just light speed them into stuff. Seems pretty effective.
Yeah, that's a boring question.
I know.
Finances. Oh, it's all boring financial stuff.
Yeah. There'll be some rule in the Star Wars universe that you can't remote control a ship into light speed or something like that. Because you need to pull a lever. You can't do that remotely.
It makes perfect sense.
It does. No, my actual parting thought is, I love this movie. It's actually what I wanted from Force Awakens, which I have gone on record by saying I thought was really derivative. Although I don't understand the fans that say that it's derivative, and then that this one's too different. You know, which one do you want? I thought, I don't want derivative, I want more of this. And hopefully I'll get more of this. Although with J.J. Abrams back at the helm, I'm not 100% sure that's going to happen. But the gauntlet's laid down. J.J., if you're listening, surprise me.
I was surprised Yoda was in that.
Hi, J.J.
Well, J.J. wasn't the director here.
How did you wear?
Yeah. No, Ryan Johnson surprised me.
Is anyone still on board for the Finn and Poe relationship?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I think it'd be fun. They can still be.
Poe Dameron spends a lot of this
Rose now.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, that girl. Did you guys talk about that girl?
We just
Not
did.
really, actually.
Nah.
Nah. She's not dead. At least I don't think she is.
Yeah, because she's going to be like a new love interest, and then that's okay because it frees Rey and Kylo Ren up for totally hooking up together.
But what about Poe Dameron and Finn?
Poe Dameron is a grown-ass man.
He is.
He's got love for BB-8.
He's got, he's like,
Apparently,
he's a career-driven man. He's all about just what, it's just about his career.
Because Poe Dameron fixed up the jacket, and Finn got the jacket sliced up.
Yeah.
It's in the thingy book. The Poe Dameron personally hand-stitched the jacket back together so he could give it to him when he got out the thing, which is definitely that's definitely a sign of love.
No, well, yeah, but as a friend, because he saved his life.
When it all comes true, I'm going to credit you, Isaac, with being on the Poe Finn hype train since day one.
A Poe Finn shipper.
Yeah.
Exactly.
A Pin? Is it Pin? Is that the relationship name? I don't know.
It's better than foe.
Yeah. Let's go for Pin.
Pin.
Yeah, we're all about Pin. What I don't want is a Poe Finn Rose love triangle. I hate love triangles. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm laughing at a video about golden retrievers.
Oh, yeah, she's watching.
I've been watching. There's a video of a dog getting told off that I watched for a bit as well.
This is how interesting our podcast is. Even the people on it can't be arsed.
But honestly, this dog is so cute.
Link will be in the show notes. Yeah.
Can I actually send it? It says it's on a page called Howlers, and it says, "Aren't they the best?" And it's
send me the link.
I'm going to tag in it right. I'm going to tag in it right now.
Okay.
Hold on.
Oh my Lord.
Hold on, Craig. Where are you, Mackenzie?
This is all going to be edited out because this is just Natalie.
No, it's not. This is what people want to hear. They want to hear what we got up to.
No one wants to hear this.
Yeah, they do.
No.
Everyone loves dogs.
There it is.
Coming up soon, a podcast all about how much we love dogs.
Can you believe all of that was edited out?
Right? Are you gonna watch it? Because it's super cute.
I'm not going to watch it right now. I'll watch it later.
Okay.
It's a responsible podcast.
I'll be looking to podcast about your immediate reactions to it.
Well, tough. Right, so... Yeah, so I want something new. This gave me something new. I'm excited about the future of the franchise. I can't wait for Rian Johnson's trilogy now. He is definitely the right sort of guy to take on this franchise. He's got fresh ideas. He's interesting. He's good at sticking to what we know about the characters while subverting the expectations we have of them. And that's important because he manages to change the characters without completely changing the characters. You know, they're still who we recognise underneath, but they've changed. So that's good. Yeah.
All
So
right.
on that note, I think it's a good time to wrap up.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you all. Yes. May the Christmas be with you.
That too.
So, Angus, thank you for coming out of your dark mirror cave.
I found my way out just in time.
That was it. Natalie, thank you for showing up at the end like you have done in the past.
Thanks. I live in a trash compactor.
Good place to live. I don't know. Isaac, thanks for coming from the light side of the Force.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm. And, yes, may the Force be with you.
And thank you, Craig, for all that you do. All of it.
No one's ever thanked me before. I'm so humbled.
Thank you.
And when we think about this podcast in years to come, remember, the greatest teacher failure is.
That was our discussion on Star Wars Episode VIII, The Last Jedi. Thanks to YouTubers Chelsea Cornell and Ian Wright for the supplied music. If you like what you heard, then please hit that subscribe button on iTunes, YouTube, or any major podcasting app. From all of us here at Kneel Before Blog and Kneel Before Pod, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We hope you'll join us for more exciting editions of Kneel Before Pod.